The following podcast contains strong language. Hello and welcome back to the Ciné Rambles podcast. Now, before we get into this week's episode, I've got a bit of a technical announcement to make. So as we are now under lockdown here in the UK, this episode was recorded remotely over a voice over IP software, as opposed to how we usually do it with us both in the same room at the same time. So this one was recorded, with us in our separate houses. It's the first time we've done it, and unfortunately there's been a bit of a technical hiccup, and long story short, my side of the conversation, that recording, is essentially unusable because of a problem with my computer, which I didn't notice till after we'd finished the record. And unfortunately we didn't really have time upon discovering this to go ahead and re-record the episode and get it ready for Friday. So basically this week is going to be a bit of a Frankenstein job. I'm going to be combining salvageable bits of the episode, mainly involving Andrew, with some stuff we've recorded on previous weeks, and I'll be adding a couple of stuff I'm recording now just on my own to sort of try and get it to a sort of normal length episode. But you're pleased to know I have worked out what went wrong, and next week's episode should be back to the normal standard of episodes. And also, Andrew is in perfect health, pretty much. After last week's episode, it turned out it was basically just a headache and he's fine. So, no panic there either. But yeah, so on to the episode. We'll be starting with Field of Streams. So here's Andy's recommendations.
Yeah, well, I've got two things. So there's The Boys, which is an Amazon Prime original series. It's based on a comic book, I think. So it's about superheroes, and it's essentially what if the DC superheroes, so like Superman, Wonder Woman, Batman, Aquaman, all that. What if they were actually money-grabbing assholes? I mean, but Superman is like stands for justice or whatever, and he's an inherently a good person, and it keeps showing you like, oh, he actually just wants to live on a farm and have a nice life. Whereas this guy is all about having all of the power, being really rich. He just doesn't really care about people. It's all a show for the camera to make him look as good as possible. And he's like, will just straight up kill people and just doesn't care at all. And it's like, what can you do as a normal person to try and fight against these superheroes who are unbelievably powerful and corrupt, just, horrible people. So they're the antagonists. So all the superheroes are the antagonists, and there's a group called the Boys who are trying to take them down essentially, or expose them for being corrupt. Yeah. And so he's not the lead character, but he's one of the lead characters, is played by Carl Urban. And I have to say, yeah, from Dredd, Lord of the Rings. He's Bones in Star Trek.
Oh yeah.
He is an absolute standout in this. He's so good. He's really funny. He's just brilliant. Excellent acting in it throughout. He's great. But what I like most about it is like a very refreshing and alternative look of the superhero genre. Because we get all of these things. I mean, there used to be 3 big Marvel ones spammed out every year and loads of others on top of it. It's starting to peter out, which is nice. And this just takes a look of it and it twists it, and it's very good. And I like the alternative that it's giving you. So the second one is I Am Not Okay With This, which is on Netflix. So that is basically this girl, I think she's 16, 17. She discovers she has superpowers, basically. Like, Carrie is obviously a huge influence on this. Loads of Stephen King stuff is, really. It's only 7 episodes long. They're all really short. They're all only about, sub 30 minutes. Yeah.
I watched the entire thing in one sitting,
Yeah.
so definitely
It's very doable.
doable.
Yeah. It's good. I enjoy it. It's very. So I'll say the bad things first. Because why not?
Okay, might as well.
It's very teenage melodrama.
Yeah,
Um,
which to be fair is kind of expected with the sort of subgenre.
yeah. But it's not a problem because it works. I think they use it to their advantage. It's more like it's more like an updated version of Carrie, basically. Although it does seemingly is set in a weird, like, timeless era. I mean, they've got
Yeah,
smartphones and stuff, but then all the cars are really old, and yeah,
because Stranger Things is so popular.
yes. But
Sort of a
so,
shadow looming in the back of all of this. But yeah, it does
so
definitely
I,
feel like
I
it's
thought,
like Carrie.
yeah, I thought more. I got really strong it feels from it, especially as
Is that just because it's the same actress?
the two lead actress, the actress and the actor are both in it. But I
Oh,
feel
really?
like, yeah, so he is the Jewish boy who, you know,
Oh, okay.
yeah, him. um,
Can't remember his name.
I can't remember his name in it. Is it Stanley is in there as well? Is he called Stanley Uris? I think he might be
I
called,
can't think of the name.
yeah. I think he might be called Stan in both of the things. Anyway, doesn't matter.
Let's go with that.
The reason I get it feels is because I feel, again, I mean, you're alright, it's got the Stranger Things thing to it, but I think with those actors, but also like, the tiny town in nowhere America, that's sort of this backdrop, and there's nothing broad for these characters, and it's just got a very, very intense Stephen King feel to it, more than a Stranger Things feel to it, I think.
Yeah.
Because no
Well, that's
point
always
was I like, oh, she's like 11. It's always like,
no.
oh no, she's like Carrie, isn't it?
Well, it's not that it reminds me of Stranger Things in that sense, more just because obviously Stranger Things is like this flagship series for Netflix that's all about a teenage girl's psychic powers, and it's like, oh, Netflix has created another series about a teenage girl's psychic powers, and like I can imagine it's sort of in that shadow of it. But yeah, it's
Yeah,
definitely very much not that the similarities to Stranger Things are minimal, if any.
yeah. It's just, yeah, I feel like it's definitely more a Stephen King, tribute than anything else.
Hmm.
I think it's okay. So another problem I have with it is it's the voiceover. I find, yeah, it's the whole thing. She's writing in her diary and she's telling you, how she feels about, oh, where are these powers coming from? How she is just discovering that she doesn't like, she fancies girls, and she's like, oh, that's why I didn't like this bloke. And it's like, well, yeah, fine. The only thing I didn't like is, like, it felt really forced in. Like, there were some scenes that would have been a lot more emotionally poignant if they hadn't had her voiceover in it.
Yeah, I mean that's probably fair. I think it would probably lose something to remove it entirely.
Yeah, I wouldn't remove it
So
entirely
about no, but
because I do like
I
having
think
her
it would
train of thought, but there's some bits that's like, this would have been a lot more powerful if you just hadn't said anything. I think it's got potential.
Okay, so on to my recommendations for this week's Field of Streams. First one I want to talk about is Climax, which is the most recent feature from Gaspar Noé, as long as you don't count Lux Eterna, but then that's still only at Cannes. So, yeah. So Gaspar Noé, famous for the likes of Irreversible and Enter the Void, both quite famously sort of sensory overload kind of films, as well as quite dark and disturbing in their subject matter and just overall tone. And while Climax, as far as I understand, is probably the tamest work of his, it's definitely still in that kind of ballpark. So it's basically an adaptation of a French urban legend concerning a dance troupe who were sort of trapped in a school over winter, and by the time the authorities found them, had sort of descended into madness and murdered each other, basically. So yeah, that pretty much gives you the idea of how the film would go. In fact, actually, in terms of the sort of trajectory of the story, it reminds me a bit of Lord of the Flies, as if what would happen if Noé tried to adapt it, but for a sort of a drug-addled neon haze, as the likes of what you'd see from like Winding Refn, or presumably the rest of Noé's work. But yeah, it's an interesting film in the way it's structured, because it's sort of so it starts, as apparently a lot of Noé's films do, with sort of the end credits at the beginning, and then we sort of lead in with a sort of about 10-20 minute sequence of talking heads of the sort of main characters, of which, interesting to note, besides Sophia Boutella, who is sort of the closest thing to a central protagonist, the rest of the cast are all non-actors in the same vein as something like City of God, and are in fact professional dancers, which, combined with the fact I believe they improvised a lot of the scripts, like I think they shot with a 5-page screenplay, it gives the whole kind of film and the character interaction a very sort of genuine, authentic kind of feel to it, which I think adds a lot of weight to the horrors of the later half of the film. But anyway, yeah, so we open with this sort of 10 to 20 minutes talking heads of introducing these characters, and their sort of backstories and their sort of relationships with each other. And then we get into the film itself, which is essentially in two parts, and it sort of reminds me a lot, and I think even Noé sort of attested this, of like a roller coaster. So in the build-up, we have them sort of like dancing around, chatting, having fun, sort of generally playing about. But at the same time, there's these tensions boiling away under the surface, and we start to see how these characters interact with each other and why, you can sort of see where things are going to go astray, the sort of the warning signs. Then as we reach about the halfway point of the film, about 45 minutes in, there's this really sort of hypnotic kind of dance sequence. They're all sort of standing around in a circle, and each character takes it in turns to go into the centre and do their bit, sort of this character will dance, which has like quite an animalistic quality to it, as if sort of the humanity's starting to escape from, they're sort of descending into a more primal level, to keep it in with the Lord of the Flies kind of analogy. Then we get the titles over the middle, and there's sort of this build-up of music, and then it feels like we reach the climax, in the sort of proper term, before the whole film sort of descends into this depraved chaos, and like a roller coaster just falls down, and everything cascades out of control as the spiked punch, which is sort of what's happened to them, the sort of the inciting incident, I suppose, starts to take its toll on them all. So yeah, it's definitely a film with sort of great sort of audio visual flair. Like, so firstly, the soundtrack is full of artists like Daft Punk and Aphex Twin and Giorgio Moroder, all sort of big names in sort of that 90s techno and sort of EDM kind of scene, which is obviously very much the sort of the style the film's going for. And I think it is set in the late 90s as well. And well, I mean, I'm no music critic, so I can't speak too much on the importance of the music, but certainly as a film critic, it really goes with that atmosphere and that aesthetic. It really sort of underlays from a sort of just pulsing, horrific vibe to it, which I think is really successful. The other thing is the cinematography. Not only is there some really good use of sort of like bold sort of colours, specifically like red lights in particular, and sort of shadows. There's also that last 45 minutes of the film, the sort of the descent. As far as I remember, is sort of shot in a Birdman style to sort of emulate a single take, which it does very well. But not only is it doing that single take, it's also the camera's never still and never straight. It's always sort of swaying or sort of dutching from side to side, or at one point, several points actually, it's turning all the way upside down. But it's always sort of moving in some kind of strange, hypnotic kind of like unusual way, which I think is really adds that sort of dissociation and sort of confusion and disorientation. That was the word. Disorientation of the scene and the film, which is really fantastic. And also, as I mentioned before, that the performances, of course, really carry the film, and especially considering it's really strange how whenever you get non-actors in a film like City of God or in Climax, they always seem to do such a fantastic job. It's like, why do we have actors in the first place? But yeah, those are the main sort of big strengths of the film. One thing I will say is it's, the central premise is quite tight, and story-wise, the film doesn't do really much more than it needs to, which is a good thing. but on the downside, it does mean there's not necessarily enough depth to it to really make it like sort of a masterpiece. I'd say, it doesn't quite give you. I think the thing is with so many characters, and we can only sort of see so much of them through this kind of story. It doesn't quite reach levels of depth as I think it needs to really be like a fantastic sort of like 5-star film. But I mean, really, other than that, there's not a whole lot to complain about. It's a really solid, really disturbing, but really well made kind of film, and it's certainly from the aspect of like sort of pure cinema, it's this sort of combination of sound and vision that really sort of like shocks you to your core. It's fantastic. It's definitely made me want to go watch more Gaspar Noé as well, which hopefully I'll be rectifying soon, as long as I can get a hold of most of his films. Enter the Void in particular is proving quite difficult to get a hold of. But yeah, so that's my first recommendation. Definitely as well, watch it on the biggest screen you can, with surround sound if possible, because it's really the kind of film that needs it. And that's on Netflix. The other film I want to talk to, which is also on Netflix, is Lupin the Third, Castle of Cagliostro. Now, I'm sure most people are aware of that now. Studio Ghibli has put, as far as I understand, all of their films, or at least most of the main films of their catalogue, on Netflix, which is fantastic because those films, have always been quite expensive to obtain, and it's great that more people get access to them and be exposed to them because they are really fantastic. But the one that always gets overlooked, and that's also been added as part of this, is Lupin the Third, which isn't really a Studio Ghibli film, but what it is the debut feature of Hayao Miyazaki, who of course directed Spirited Away and Princess Mononoke and basically all the really big successful films of Studio Ghibli. But this was his first film he made before Studio Ghibli was assembled. So while it's not a Ghibli film as such, it's definitely, if you like that, you'll like this too. Spiritually closest to something like, I guess maybe Laputa, and maybe an element of Porco Rosso as well. But yeah, so essentially it's about, so Lupin the Third is this, I think he was in a manga first, and then has had a series of films, but essentially he's sort of this ongoing character in Japanese fiction, sort of like a wisecracking sort of thief of a sort of I'd say sort of like 30s era sort of gangster almost. He's got the sort of the hat and the sort of the Tommy gun sort of, yeah. It's always got a quip for every situation in the sort of Sonic the Hedgehog sense. But yeah, it's, to be honest, story wise, it's nothing like sort of groundbreaking. It's essentially there's a big castle and there's sort of an evil king who lives in it, and he's got a whole load of treasure, and Lupin wants to steal that treasure, and then he finds out there's also a princess in the castle. Fancies he'll sort of save her as well. It's basically as far as the plot goes. But, it's Hayao Miyazaki, so of course it's stupendously animated, full of some really interesting, exciting, and imaginative set pieces. It's sort of got that Indiana Jones kind of like Saturday morning serial kind of vibe to it, in the best possible way, in that really sort of like rip-roaring kind of adventurous fun. Also, probably rare for the recommendations in this podcast, you could watch it with family as well. It'll be perfect sort of family viewing. I think children of all ages probably enjoy it, and adults will love it as well, because I mean, again, beautiful animation, and from what I remember, Lupin is a really funny character, and he's always got some fantastic lines. Not any that I can quote right now because it has been a while since I watched it. But yeah, if you've been at all interested in the Studio Ghibli stuff available on Netflix, do check out Lupin the Third as well, because if you loved those films, you'll most likely love that as well, and it often does get overlooked. So yeah, those are my Field of Streams recommendations.
So this week we're going to do another fundamental.
We need a jingle for that.
Do, 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 do. There you go. You're welcome.
I'll sample that.
So fundamental is when a film is adapted from a book or a novel or a comic or whatever, and it makes a subtle change to the script, to characters.
A seemingly subtle change.
Yeah, a seemingly subtle change. Or, even to a line of dialogue or a tiny action that just fundamentally changes the characters or the scene or something, so that it is just inherently different and most of the times worse in the film. Last time I did Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. This time I'm doing Harry Potter and Deathly Hallows.
Is this leading on from the same idea, or is this a
No,
different...
it's the last time I had the problem with Harry's character and Dumbledore's, by extension. And this time, it's Harry, but more on Voldemort this time.
Okay.
And actually the whole climactic scene of Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2, because they split the book in two for some reason. And you've said you have seen
I have seen...
Deathly Hallows.
Yeah, both films. I saw Part 2 in the cinema on the first day it came out.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
In 3D.
Oh, 3D's so important now.
Yeah.
Okay, so, just quickly, it's literally the final showdown of Harry versus Voldemort. So, like I did last time, I'll go through each one and then explain what the big detail is that really is the fundamental. So, in the book, Harry pretends to be dead up to a point. They all go into the Great Hall in Hogwarts, where all the good guys get a load of allies and start beating back the Death Eaters and Voldemort, to the point where it's only Voldemort and Bellatrix are left alive.
Right.
Oh, not left alive, left...
Unarrested.
Unarrested, still standing.
Yeah.
Bellatrix gets beaten by Molly Weasley.
Oh yeah, that's... Oh no, that is in the film, isn't it? But
It is
it's
in the
not as
film.
interesting as it was in the book.
No.
Because I remember that being like a really intense...
It's a really pivotal and really good moment
and
in
such a
the
great
book.
culmination of character in the
Yeah.
book, I remember. In the film, it's sort of just... It's sort of there, but not very well.
Yeah. But also, it's such a good moment in the book, because you always see Mrs. Weasley as, like... Oh, she's just a mother figure, and she's always trying to stop Harry getting into danger, and like, oh no, you can't go into the battle, you're too young. She says that to Ginny.
Yeah.
And as soon as she sees Ginny in danger, she like pushes her out the way and is like...
Full on badass
yeah.
mode.
And it's such a good moment in the book, and in the film it lasts like 2 minutes and it's kind of boring. Not boring,
well,
but
not boring.
it's
It's
just not
It's
done.
not got... I remember in the book being like this particularly stand-up moment. Like it's quite a few pages of their fight, isn't it?
And it's one of the the use of, I think there's about 3 swear words in the whole Harry Potter series, and that's one of them, and it's like, that's such a good moment as well.
Like, aliens, get away from her, you bitch.
Yeah, it is exactly that,
yeah. Do you reckon that was a deliberate reference?
Possibly.
Might have been.
Yeah,
You know what, I don't think I've read the book since I've watched No, that can't be true. I don't know. Anyway, keep going.
Anyway, so then Harry was under his invisibility cloak. He jumps out and he's like, stop it, I'm going to...
Surprise.
And then he has this... I say duel because they don't properly duel. He starts circling...
I thought you were talking about vapes then.
Him and Voldemort start circling each other, and they have a conversation where he's explaining how he's alive and how Voldemort cannot possibly beat him. Alright?
This is in the film.
No, this is in the book.
Okay.
In the film, Harry and Voldemort, he goes up to... he reveals himself way earlier than he does in the book. Harry then starts running away from Voldemort as Voldemort shoots spells at him randomly, and then they have the weird hugging match.
Which I remember being, because it was in the trailer and I saw it in the film, I was like, this really does not... It's such a... You can see it was so clearly made for the trailer and then all shoehorned into the film. Because it seems so strange as a moment.
But it's so out of place and weird, and like you never see, like, so they're apparating, but not really apparating how they apparate anywhere at all else in the series. They're like floating around in weird smoke balls, like wrestling each other, like massaging each other, and it's like, what is going on? And then they land and they like flop down and they both grab each other's wands and start dueling, but they're like, spells connect and there's loads of weird explosions.
Same as what happened in Goblet of Fire.
Yes. Which works in Goblet of Fire because he needs that connection of the wands to have the ghosts come out and tell him what to do or whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway, so what the annoying part is, right? So instead of... In the book, we get this conversation and you finally understand why Harry's still alive, what the whole connection is, and why Harry can beat Voldemort and why Voldemort will never win against Harry. But then also Harry does something which defines his character. He tries to get Voldemort, he's like... Firstly, he starts to call him Tom Riddle, which humanises him, bringing him down to his level.
Yeah.
So what a big part of it is, if you think about the staging in the book, they are circling each other. They are complete equals. In this point, it's only those two. In the film, Voldemort is still chasing Harry. Harry is still inferior to Voldemort. Voldemort is chasing Harry, and they dive off the cliff together, and it's really weird, right? And you still think, oh, Voldemort's this big, strong thing. Whereas in the book, they are equals. And you're like, okay, they are... This is it. This is the end. Anyway, but Harry offers Voldemort, he's like, think about what you've done and try for some remorse. Right? Because remorse is the only way to restore your soul.
Think about what you've done, like sending a child to his room.
Yeah. But like, try for some remorse because it's the only way your soul can heal, or you're going to spend eternity suffering or whatever. And he's like, but he offers his one greatest enemy, the person he knows has killed hundreds of people, including his parents, including his best mates. You know, he's killed so many people, and he still offers him mercy, right? And like, that's such a defining point, because that's like, Harry Potter cannot get a bigger person than offering essentially wizard Hitler mercy, because he's like, you have to at least try.
Yeah.
You know,
this is your chance to redeem
this is your
yourself.
try. Like, that's such a good moment in the book, because it's like, that's like, and they just don't do that in the film at all. There's no indication of that at all, because he's still like, oh, he hates Voldemort, and it's like, well, yeah, but so what? It's like that offering of mercy, that like try for the remorse so your soul can at least attempt to heal. It's like, you know, that makes such a big difference to Harry's character, because instead of being this very merciful, benevolent character, he's just like, oh yeah, he's just some random kid again. It's just annoying. And also, the other thing is, I've got a quote.
Oh, you got a quote?
Yep.
Is this from the book or the film?
From the book.
Okay.
So, in the book, they do the one connecting thing, and then the snake, Neville kills the snake, and then, for some reason, Harry's spell, even though it's a disarming spell, kills Voldemort, right? Exactly. Your
book?
face... No, in the film.
Okay.
Right? And then Voldemort starts to... His hand cracks and he starts to die or whatever. But I'll get onto that in a second. So in the book, it says he was killed by his own rebounding curse. So Harry hits him quicker than with the disarming spell. So Voldemort's wand flips out of his hand, and then he gets killed essentially by his own spell.
Okay.
Yeah? He gets killed by himself. So Harry's soul is still pure and whole, because it's Voldemort's basically killed himself, right? But they don't do that. Again, it's just Harry's killed him with a spell that wouldn't kill Voldemort. And it's like, this is dumb, right? And also, then, in the film, Voldemort's body then, like, disintegrates and becomes flaky and weird. Yeah, like, he's been
stopped using his medicated shampoo.
Got another quote from the book.
Okay.
Tom Riddle hit the floor with a mundane finality. Because the whole point of it was to prove
That's a great phrase, mundane finality.
Isn't it, though? Like, that's a really good phrase. But the whole point of it is to prove that Voldemort wasn't special. He was always a man. Even though Voldemort tried so hard to make himself immortal, he was still, at the end of the day, just a man. That's why mundane finality is such a good, like...
Because it sums up perfectly. He just fell to the floor like any other body.
Exactly. But they make him float away and flaky like he's died like some fucking ghost man.
He's transcending to another plane.
Exactly. And it's like, that's not right. That completely, fundamentally changes the whole point of his death scene, though. It's like, all the other times anyone has been hit by a killing curse, they just flop down dead. It's like, why wouldn't Voldemort do that? The whole point is proving that he would do that because he's just a man. He's not the devil incarnate or whatever. And it's so annoying that they changed that, but that's such a small change. But it completely, like, ruins the point of this climax, you know?
So do you think the point of a change was to make it more cinematic?
Well, absolutely. Like, because you think about it, if you read the book, the final chapter, or the chapter before the final chapter, whatever, is literally them just talking, and they have this conversation, and it's very good conversation because you learn loads of secrets and stuff, and it's really good, and it's really tense, and you get this, you know, excellent descriptions, but that would not have translated very well to screen, I don't think. Maybe probably they could have done it, but I feel the reason they did what they did is because they needed a big explosion cinematic.
A long drawn out
ending.
dialogue scene is rarely what you want in the middle of the climax of a blockbuster. That's the thing, or at least as far as the studio is concerned.
But it's just such a shame that they changed it, because like that. The whole point, like Harry's like, oh, I'm not scared of him because he's just a man, and then they change that and make him float away as if he's not just a man. They do the same thing randomly with Bellatrix Lestrange as well.
She explodes, doesn't she?
Well, no, she gets the dusted as well, as if Thanos snapped her as well randomly.
Because I thought from what I remember of her death was because she gets all like turned to stone or something by thingy and then exploded.
Possibly. I remember her being dusted as well, but I could be wrong.
I think that's because because she used Reducto. I think that's why that is.
Okay.
I remember. So that one's alright.
Yeah. But there you go. That's a fundamental, how it fundamentally changed. Any comments?
No, I mean, I agree with you from what you said. That is a pretty, not only is a fundamental change, it also makes a lot more sense in the book.
Yeah.
Because Harry's a better person, and Voldemort is just a man who was corrupted by the dark side, so to speak.
Yeah, but he was as well. But it also shows how, even right at the end, faced with the most evil wizard that has ever lived, Harry still offers him one final chance. It's like, this is your last chance to say sorry, to apologise, to be a better man. He literally tells him in the book, be a better man.
There's also a problem I find, especially with stuff aimed relatively at children, when you've got like a big villain who's put as being on a pedestal, like, oh, you're telling your children you can't ever be as bad as him because he's not like us. He's some other creature of above being human.
Yeah.
But if you show him as being just a man, there's that, it could be like a normal person. There's that idea that, he was just like anyone else, but he took the wrong path, and don't take the wrong path because you could end up like him.
Yeah.
But by making him like, oh, but he disintegrates when he dies, and he's not like a real person, it puts him on that pedestal where it's like, oh, what, don't worry about becoming like him. So I think it's a lot better to have a villain who's actually human, and at the end is just as pathetic as anyone else is, and just dies normally. As the mundane finality.
Yeah.
I love that phrase. That's great.
It's really good, isn't it?
Yeah.
But also how Harry, right at the end, I mean, he's been calling him Voldemort the entire time, and then right at the end, right in that final thing, he starts calling him Riddle, or Tom Riddle again.
Gives him that humanisation.
Because Voldemort's power is in his name, isn't it? Like, people are so afraid to say Voldemort that they call him he who must not be named.
Which is probably a thing he set up in the first place.
Exactly, well, he did, yeah. But Harry goes further than that to even say, he's not even calling him Voldemort, he's calling him Tom Riddle, which is his actual name, which Voldemort hates. It's like... Which they do sort of in the film, like he says, oh, come on then, Tom. It's like once, it's like, oh, piss off.
Oh, come along, Tom.
Come on then, Tom. Let's have a weird face massage. And then you were right, because what you pointed out, we watched the scene, it was like trying to show that, oh, they're the same person. It's like, no, they're not. The point is that while they have, this pairing thing, that Harry is a fundamentally much better person.
That was supposed to be the whole point of the film. Certainly I think in Order of Phoenix, the whole idea was like, just because they're attached doesn't mean he's like, I'm not like you. There's a whole speech about I'm not.
Yeah, exactly.
To then make it like in Deathly Hallows Part 2, it's like, oh, look at them merging together because the same person. Like, no. You've done a whole film about how they're not the same person.
But also, that's the whole point is that they will never be the same person because Harry is just inherently a good person.
Yeah,
and Voldemort
he has
is
mercy.
Not. Exactly, he has mercy, which they just don't show, and they're like, oh yeah. It's like, yeah, there's a mirror there, but it's not... The point is that he's becoming more than that, as he's rising above it. Whereas in the film, it's just like, oh yeah, he happened to kill him first. It's like... It just completely ruins it, doesn't it? It's just annoying.
Sounds like the Harry Potter version of Hand Shot First.
Well, it is, sort of. It's like, oh yeah, for some unknown reason, killing Voldemort's snake makes Harry's spell beat him. It's like, what? The point is, like, the snake's like a Horcrux, right? Which means if Harry had killed Voldemort, he could have come back. This immortality is like, no, Harry's killed all the Horcruxes. So now it is just 1v1.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it's just annoying.
That's the end of another fundamental. Unless have you got something else?
There is one other
Go
thing,
on.
So in the end of Deathly Hallows Part 2, so there's the whole thing about the Elder Wand, right?
Oh, this is what I thought you were going to talk about originally.
Oh, well, I may as well mention it
Yeah.
as well. Harry fucking snaps it in half and throws it off the bridge, right?
Yeah.
Firstly, this is supposed to be the most powerful thing that has ever existed, and he just breaks it easily. And it's
It
like,
can be used for good, but never mind that.
But also in the book, he's like, he repairs his wand, his Holly and Phoenix Feather wand, which is the wand he, beat Voldemort with numerous times and whatever. And he repairs that. It's like, the only way I can repair it is with a wand that's more powerful than any other. So he repairs his wand, and he has it back, and then he puts the Elder Wand back in Dumbledore's grave. Because he's like...
It was his wand.
It was his wand, but he's always like, if I never get defeated, the wand's power will end. And I'll live a normal life, and it'll be fine. Whereas he just fucking breaks it and ruins it. It's like, there's been this whole film, or 2 films long, talking about wand lore and how important it is, and the intricacies of it, and he just fucking breaks it. It's like, that shouldn't happen. That shouldn't be able to happen. And the whole point of the Elder Wand is that it can't be broken, because it's the Elder Wand. It's this supernatural, super powerful wand that can't just be snapped in half, because why don't you think anyone has snapped it in half before?
Who's going to win? The most powerful wand in all of existence, or 2 breaky hands?
And then he just chucks it off a bridge and keeps Malfoy's wand. It's like, no, at least have it.
At least give Malfoy's wand back.
But also at least fix your wand that you're so attached to, rather than just keeping Malfoy's wand.
Yeah.
Like, the whole point is that you fix the... Sorry. Oh,
Poor
God.
microphone.
Yeah, poor microphone.
So would you say...
Getting really triggered by it.
To what extent does that affect your opinion of Deathly Hallows Part 2 of the film?
The film... When it came out in cinemas, I did enjoy it. I liked it. It was good. Watching it back now, I'm like, I have no incentive to ever watch that film again because I've got the book.
Yeah.
And for reference, the last CD, so of the audiobook for Deathly Hallows, is stuck in my car. I've listened to the last CD, which is the last 2 chapters, probably close to 50, 60 times, which is why I know it so well.
Why do you keep the book? Why do you keep listening to it then if it's stuck in your car?
Oh, because I'm thinking every time I don't have anything else to listen to, I'll just listen to it, so it's fine.
Have you not tried to get it out?
It's fine. Anyway.
If you didn't borrow that CD from anyone.
I did.
Well, on that note, that's the end. Is we finished the fundamentals?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so that brings us to the end of this episode. You have been listening to Ciné Rambles with Nick
And Andrew.
You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/CinéRamblesOfficial and on Twitter at Ciné Rambles. And if you'd like to read more content, you can go to the blog at cinerambles.blogspot.com. And as always, if you'd like to send in any comments, any reviews, any viewpoints, or anything else you'd like read out on the show, you can email them to cinerambles@gmail.com. Thanks for listening. See you next week. Bye.